Welcome back. This is probably the last Stealthwatch video I'll be doing for a little bit. And then I'm going to move on to other topics. I think tomorrow I'm going to try to configure Splunk and start adding some videos in regards to that. But in this one, I just kind of wanted to walk through from an operational perspective using Stealthwatch and some of the built-in dashboards, and so you kind of know how to use it. So starting out, dashboards, the built-in ones that are kind of here are network security and Stealthwatch Cloud. To get to cognitive threat analytics, we have to do what we did in the first couple videos where we enabled cognitive threat analytics. And if I go here, it just kind of redirects me to the dashboard for cognitive. Stealthwatch Cloud, that's where you can have it integrated with the observable networks, so now called Stealthwatch Cloud. And if you go here, without having it already signed up, or without your account entered in, it actually gives you a 60-day trial. You can go ahead and integrate that with your AWS account or Azure or Google Cloud or any number of cloud accounts. I don't have it set up here, so I'm not going to kind of bother. We did install 3 different apps. We installed the visibility assessment app, and that kind of gives you that high-level report that I was talking about, that executive report. It's been about 24 hours since I installed it, and as you can see here, there's not really a lot of vulnerable things going on. If I can go through, and it's kind of interactive, that I can click on it. If I wanted to see like how many hosts are communicating in the network and a little bit more information, I can see it in this interactive map. I can see what countries it's been seeing traffic to, or if I just wanted to generate that report, and I can print it and show it to somebody or use it as print it out for executives, I'd be able to do it here. The ETA Cryptographic Audit one, let's go ahead and take a look at that, because we actually have configured ETA in our network. So I actually haven't run this yet, but I'm going to go ahead and run it for, and we'll just do everything, in the inside hosts. So apply. Let's go ahead and take a look, see what that report looks like. It's actually my first time pulling it, so this should be interesting. Hopefully it sees something. Okay, so looks like there's been 11 connections, and it's been using mostly TLS 1.0, or 1.2, so that's good. And the rest of it has been unencrypted, but that's not an issue at all. And I can see the cipher suites. This is a much more busy network, we'd see a lot more stuff, and we'd probably see a lot more different cipher suites and TLS versions, but just kind of giving you a good overview. The host classifier, a lot of my servers aren't really on NetFlow right now. I probably would have to configure something along the lines of configure some NetFlow flow sensors in my VMware environment to do so. So right now there's not really much recommended, but these are some of the apps, the 3 apps that we installed the other day. We kind of knew that they weren't going to show anything in this lab, so it's not a big deal right now. So for the monitoring, this is kind of more from a perspective of digging into like what hosts we see, and this is it'll tell you what's alarming the most right on top. So concern index is like, it can be a number of things. It could be like, instead of just looking at one specific anomalous behavior, it could be large, a combination of things. So it could be, it's doing port scans and high uploads and a lot of east-west traffic and a lot of different relationship-based traffic. But right now it's pretty quiet. I don't really have a lot beaconing here. Maybe if I did like an angry pings IP scanner, I would be able to see a little bit more. But if I click on one of the hosts and I want to see a little bit more detail, if there were any security events, I can see here. So any alarms that are blaring off here, it would be up here, right here on top, and I can dig into that. But there's no alarms, so kind of a little less, little boring there. I can see that the top traffic by peer group that it's reaching out to. So it's reached out to Europe, but mostly things in the United States for outside hosts. There's been really no alarms, but there's been a couple little security events. And if I want to get a little more detail or see the flows on those, the associated flows for that event, I can go ahead and click on that. and it should do a filtered search based off of that. But I don't really want to see that right now. I just want to go back here. If I want to get a little more detail on what is a little security event, and a security event isn't necessarily bad unless there's a lot of them, or if it's if it's something that's really high risk. But you can see here that it might be adding to the concern index just based off of it start doing some pings, but it's not going to alarm based off of it yet because it's only been about 10 pings. But it'll give you a little bit more detail on what that security event is. And one other thing is you can also do external lookups. So if you wanted to check the host or source or target IP, you can go ahead and do an external lookup and see anything that in regards to like the host report for that target IP. With external lookups, you can actually configure those though for custom things. So if it's going to a outside host, like in this case, if it's going to an outside host, there's some built-in external lookups. So DShield, if I want to do that, it'll populate with that IP address and give me a DShield report. Also, if you're using, if you want to see the Talos reputation for that IP address as well. And OpenDNS, if you have OpenDNS and you're signed in, you'll be able to actually populate that and do an umbrella investigate. So you can see here, you get the report and these are the built-in external lookups. Now, if you wanted to integrate your own external lookup, you can actually go here and it gives you instructions on how to do it and how to enter that in. That's where you would utilize the configuration external lookup topic, but I'm not going to configure that here, but I've seen people use like Splunk or AMP for endpoints to look up IP addresses. So those are some of the good ideas. Going down here, if we scroll down, we get to see the application traffic, top application traffic, inbound, outbound. We can see the top application traffic, internal and external for this host. We can see the users and sessions, who logged in and out and what times, and just kind of follow along. And if there's any cognitive threat analytics incidents associated with this IP address, it'll show it here as well. So going back, that was the host. Now, if we wanted to look at something a little higher level, host groups, and see some information for alarming host groups, we can actually dig into specific host groups and see like the top host groups that they were communicating with in the last 24 hours for inside and outside. We can see the total amount of traffic coming in the last 24 hours and out and being moved laterally inside. As you can see here, you get like a little graph of the last 7 days. Top applications, inbound, outbound. If I want to zoom into this at any point, I can just kind of zoom and it'll be pretty nice to be able to zoom in. Now, if you want to zoom in and actually do a report on this, like view the flows or view top services, ports, conversations, you can do so as well if you see any suspicious spikes. So those are some of the kind of cool things that you can do here. And you can also, configure your policy or host groups based off of some of the alarms you might see here. Now, let's say like I want to see if how much communication we've been doing with, say, Russia. So let's do a search for Russia really quickly. Probably not doing much, but let's go ahead and see if there's a... Okay, and so in this case, there was 75 bytes in, but nothing out or, going out to Russia, so that's okay. And there's probably one host that tried to send like, an NTP, tried to reach out for NTP, but never received anything back. So that's where we can kind of see some high-level stuff from like a host group standpoint. If you wanted to look for users, here we go as well. List out the users and we can check to see who's the most alarming users. Interface is pretty cool. Like if you're trying to troubleshoot something or an application issue or maybe even a network issue, you can zoom into the actual interface and get some good analytics based off just the interface itself. I don't have NTP configured correctly on here, so it keeps saying the start time. Ignore that. So I can do like a custom range to see what was going through that interface at a specific time. I can see the top application traffic and see any spikes. Now let's reset the zoom. I noticed a little bit of a spike here. So if I wanted to see exactly what this spike was, I can go ahead and click on this and do another, see all the flows for that time or top reports, like see the top conversations. We could also see packets per second to see the inbound and outbound spikes. So it's kind of something cool that we can see here. Yeah, if you want to see any flows coming from, that export or anything along those lines, it's a cool thing that you can kind of drill into. If you want to see utilization, and this is used, you actually configured SNMP already and seeing the correct utilization, you can see how utilized those ports were. So that's more of like from a network point of view, or if you're trying to troubleshoot an application, this is a really useful dashboard. So let's go for up to analyze now. Now analyze is where we can do those flow searches. We can do a maximum of 400,000 flows returned, and we can download it via CSV file or just see certain things here. I'm just going to do a quick let's do the last 8 hours, and I'm going to do port 443/TCP, and I will go ahead and include here in the search. Now, there's a lot of parameters you can look at to kind of drill down, like you can do greater than amount of packets or less than. And you can also click to include interface data. If you're using like a firewall or something and sending the flow action back, you can also filter by permitted, denied, permitted and denied. You can also get very specific on which exporter we're going to be using. Check for certain types of encryption or algorithms or ciphers. But for now, let's go ahead and just click search and pull back everything in the last 8 hours for port 443 TCP, whether it's lateral or east or north-south. Once you pull up these, there's a way you can kind of see. If you click on this, you can see kind of like a more user-friendly looking view. If you click on the little arrow here, you can kind of see some more detailed information about this flow. And you can see the interfaces that it passed through, that's NetFlow was seen passing through. So in this case, this flow was out of quite a bit of interfaces, and came back with my ASA. So we can see kind of each direction coming back, went out 5 exporters and came back through at 5 exporters. Let's see what else we can do. We can also change the columns so we can get a lot more information. So depending on, I'm going to move that back. So depending on what you have or Stealthwatch integrated with, if you have it integrated with like a network visibility module, you can actually make sure that there's a column showing for the process name, username, subject user, things like that. I'll go ahead and put subject user because I do think that we should see that from the ICE integration, but I'm also going to include encryption information, because since we are using encrypted threat analytics, some of this information should come up if it goes through one of my devices that have it turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and let's go ahead and see. Okay, so seeing here, looks like there's been some recent traffic with TLS 1.0 was being used and TLS 1.2. We can also see the encryption, which ciphers are being used, things like that. I'm also going to maybe remove the TrustSec thing. I don't think I really need that because right now we haven't configured TrustSec yet and it's just taking up space. So yeah, I can see the encryption key exchange, you can see the algorithm, and you can export all of this in a CSV file if you wanted to. But it's good information to have, and you can kind of filter what you want to see as part of this display here, of course. So not everything was went through my exporters that are using cognitive threat analytics, but a couple of them were, as you can see here. So it's a good flow search if you're trying to like look for, let's say you want to see all traffic that was coming from inside to outside or between 2 host groups, or if you want to see everything that Catherine at securitydemo.net was doing in the last 5 minutes. That username would be returned with all the traffic. Or if you have a custom time you want to do instead, you can also do that where you use a custom amount of time. Let's say you're doing some, I'm quitting, or I've, HR needs to see all the they suspect I've done something bad and they need to see all the servers I've accessed in the last, couple hours, or, for a certain amount of time. That's a good way of just kind of doing a search for my name and pulling that information up. So it's, yeah, as you can see here, this is everything that Kat McNamara at securitydemo.net accessed. So there's a lot of use cases for flow searches, and if you want to save any search results or save any searches to rerun, that's easy one to do. If you want to do a host search based on IP address, or you can go ahead and do so as well. Let's go ahead and do 106 search. There we go. Copyright infringement is an interesting one. So if anyone runs a network, I'm sure you've received a notice from your provider saying somebody's been downloading an illegal video or copyrighted video, but all it has is the public IP address and the time that it was done. So when you send the net flow from certain NAT devices like ISR routers, ASAs, Palo Alto firewalls, things like that, those will include the actual NAT configuration, or NAT mapping. So it'll show the private IP to public IP mapping, and it'll include that in the flow itself. So if you receive one of those annoying emails and you've got like a public IP address of, and what port it was on, you can go ahead and do a search for that based on that information in the email and the date that it was seen on, and do a search, and it'll give you that information of which user was it that did it at that time. So it gives you a little bit more information. It gives you that private IP address, so you can kind of investigate and smack them on the wrist when you're done. So yep, that's what copyright is. It's lesser known feature, but it's kind of cool to use when you get those annoying emails. So if you're doing a longer search, you might have, or you've just recently finished a flow search or a report, you can actually go here and either see the report that's been finished, or you can pull up once it's completed, if it's taking a little bit longer to do. So like, for example, one of those top reports where you're looking for top conversations, top ports, top services, those might take a while depending on how long the search is for, because it has to go through every single flow in that Vertica database and compile that information. So if you're looking for something like the top conversations in the last 6 months, you better sit back, grab some coffee, maybe go to lunch, and you can come back to this window and check that job. Configuration, we kind of went through this already. Network classification was, it just looks at presumed network scanners, which we don't have any quite yet in this environment. This is where we can assign a policy, an IP, a subnet, or a host to, some sort, to a host group. We already talked about custom applications and policy. We already configured Cisco ICE, we configured Active Directory, and we talked about Stealthwatch Cloud. I don't have that configured already in my environment. I don't plan on doing it anytime soon because I don't have a AWS cloud to, or account to be configuring right now. Going over here to the little gear here, we can look at central management. We already went through that. If you have a packet analyzer that's doing full packet capture already in your environment, you can configure this here. Same with UDP director. So if you're doing UDP director to send NetFlow to multiple sources or multiple destinations, you can configure which destinations here centrally. And this is where you configure the external lookup configuration, and user management is for users that are logging in. So you can create users who can log into the GUI of Stealthwatch, the data roles. And I believe that Stealthwatch supports both Radius and TACX configuration for being able to log in. Let me just double check this here. Yeah, there is a way to do this where you can actually have this configured for Radius. So if you don't want to just utilize local admin users or local users, that's not a problem. But not really going to bother trying to configure this now. Maybe that can be a follow-up video later, because it's been a couple of years since I've done it and I don't want to take up all this time. Now, if you go to desktop and desktop client, it'll pull up the Swing client, which I was just kind of showing you here. There's a move to move away from this, and all the new features are being added to the Stealthwatch WebUI. But there still is a lot of stuff here, like a lot of built-in dashboards for like DDoS attacks, DDoS traffic. You can still create custom dashboards here. There's a lot of like certain configurations that you can't yet configure in the WebUI, like the SNMP configuration. But you can kind of take a look here and see, like, depending on which context you're clicked in here, you will have a lot more options. So like right here, I'm clicking and I can see like flow reports, and there's tons of reports you can choose from, and you can export these dashboards or these reports as CSVs. You can schedule them, or PDFs as well. If I move to another part of the context, you'll notice that a lot of stuff is grayed out, so it really just depends on where you're clicked in the context, what you can do. You can also create maps. There's some pre-built in here, and they're kind of maps based on host groups, and you can also create, like, draw lines between, relationship lines between different host groups, and create these relationship lines to show traffic based off of certain ports or services. In this case, these are kind of the pre-built ones that are out there. If I wanted to create a new one, I can, use whatever graphic I want and overlay it on top, and then drag actual host groups in here and draw lines between them and define what traffic we're looking at with that line. But I'm not going to kind of bother here, because this Swing client is dying. It is going to go the way of the dodo bird eventually, and going too deep into this probably could be a couple hour-long video just on its own, because for example, if I'm creating my own custom report, that could be that can get pretty intense, and I have so many options to do so, but I don't really want to spend like 30 minutes building a custom application or a custom dashboard here if this is something that gets moved to like Stealthwatch 7.1 in the future. But as you can see here, this is what the document builder, if I wanted to like drag different add column, I'm just going to add a row, and I can sit here and add things in here and define like certain searches, add tabs on here if I want to make it one really comprehensive dashboard. But again, it's something that is going to probably go away and be moved over to this WebUI, so I don't want to focus on it a lot, and that's why in a lot of these training videos I kind of steered away from the Swing client, because I wanted to focus more on what we could do here, and what this will be something that will be lasting longer and migrated towards in the future. So that being said, I just wanted to kind of go through the WebUI and touch on the Swing client a little bit and show you kind of that overview. My next videos, I'm going to dig into Splunk and integrate it with a lot of my Cisco tools. Probably set up Qualys at some point with ICE. Do some firepower IPS tuning, Umbrella, AMP for endpoints, CTR, Meraki and ICE, and some other and Cisco TrustSec. But thank you for bearing with me with my multiple Stealthwatch videos I just pounded out in the last 24 hours, and I appreciate you watching.